Broadcaster, journalist and web designer. Live from Bondi is Henry David O'Donovan. Henry, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Lindsay. How are you?
Not too bad, Henry. Give us an idea of what's actually happening out there at the moment, because this side of the world, I mean, we know you're experiencing your spring, summer, and, you know, temperatures quite high. We've seen people wading through the streets waist high, basically in T-shirts and shorts. People have been warned to stay out of the water because of the risk of crocodiles and snakes. What exactly is happening, Henry?
Well, you know what? The risk of crocodiles and snakes is a bit over-exaggerated by the media. However, they do exist, and it does happen. As you mentioned, Toowoomba, which is a small town in Queensland, did go through an horrific time in the last 48 hours. And that was the beginning of what's going to happen with Brisbane. Now, with Brisbane, right now it's just after 8 in the evening here in Sydney, and obviously Brisbane, it's only an hour earlier. At the moment, it stands at 12 people dead and 51 missing. This is the worst disaster Brisbane has had since 1974. What we expect is 5.5 metre peak in the Brisbane river waters by 2 a.m. So what's actually happening now is not what's going to happen at 2 a.m. This is what everyone's scared of, because it hasn't happened yet, and people are almost, saying it's all over, but it's not. It's actually just beginning. At 2 a.m., between 2 and 4:30 a.m., we are going to get the worst flooding in Australia's history since 1974. In fact, it's going to be worse than 1974, which was a dreadful time for Brisbane. Brisbane has a population of 2 million people, and at the moment, Brisbane is basically empty. There's no one there. 65,000 homes at risk at the moment as we speak.
And it's hard to believe that the third largest city in Australia has literally been deserted.
I know. It's a most bizarre thing. The media here in Australia, all the commercial networks are covering this, and it's kind of weird because we're looking at live footage of Australia's third largest city. And basically, there's no one there. It's just empty. And what's really a problem with this is that a lot of boats have left their moorings and are crashing into bridges. Now, this is a real problem because overnight it's going to get worse. And I think, from what I can see from the media, is that they're going to be bashing into the banks, bashing into bridges. The amount of deluge from this tomorrow morning our time is going to be enormous.
So where have the 2.5 million people evacuated to, Henry?
That's a good question. A lot of them have gone to relief centres which have been set up. The thing about Australia is that Queensland has done this before. In 1890, I think, and in 1974, they had the same problem in Brisbane. So we've done all this before, but we've got better technology now. But the only problem is that in 1974, there was only 1 million people living in Brisbane. Now there's 2.5 million people living in Brisbane. So whilst we have got better with technology and learned how to deal with these problems, we also have to deal with a huge increase in population.
And of course, there's so many Irish people who've gone out, young Irish people who've gone out, and Brisbane would be one of the cities that they would have actually gone to.
Absolutely. I mean, it is. I mean, I'm on Bondi Beach, as you know, which is home to British and Irish tourists. They tend to go north in the summer. They go north in the winter, more so than the summer, but they also go north in the summer, and they ain't going north today. I'm telling you that for nothing. And the irony of all this is that, I've been watching a lot of media on this today, and it's been blue skies all over Brisbane. It looks beautiful, and yet it's all underwater. The Premier of New South Wales, Anna Bligh, said it will be a gruesome day for residents of Queensland tomorrow, and it will be, because they're going to come back to their houses and they're just all flooded. It's actually the worst flooding in a century.
Well, I've seen where Anna Bligh has actually said stay in your homes and do not travel unless it's absolutely necessary. But how does one stay in a flooded home?
Yeah, that's a good question. But I think when she said that, she really meant stay in your home if it's safe, because a lot of people have been staying in their homes. And as I was saying earlier on, we have 12 dead, and I've got a feeling that's going to triple, quite frankly. People who stayed in their homes 2 days ago, at one stage, the Queensland government said, hey, you've got to leave. If you don't leave, we're not going to give you food, we're not going to give you water. If you don't leave, there's nothing we can do. We can't force you to leave, but we're not going to support you unless we have to airlift you out, which costs millions of dollars, And a lot of people didn't leave, and a lot of people have died,
Now, I mean, we are getting figures in of people who have disappeared and who have died. And in honesty, the figures are quite low at this stage. We know that there's about 67 people missing, 22 people have died. But, I mean, do you see an increase in these figures?
Absolutely. Oh, without doubt. I mean, look, you got to understand that because of the weather conditions, they can't actually get to these people. So these helicopters are flying around picking up people from the top of roofs of houses. But the thing is, the weather restrictions, I mean, it's very important that they don't put their own people at risk as well, you know. And the truth is, this figure will rise, and it'll rise substantially. So the authorities say it will take 2 years to repair the damage of the worst damage in a century. That's what I'm getting from the SMH, Sydney Morning Herald.
So what kind of resources are being put in place for people who have to evacuate their homes?
Very good resources, Lindsay. If you compare our disaster to that in America a couple of years ago, Louisiana, we're much better prepared, and there are a couple of thousand people in refuges around the outskirts of Brisbane on higher ground. So I think Australia is doing a fantastic job. But you have to understand that, as I said in my blog earlier on, really the bottom line is tonight is the big deal. Tonight is the huge deal, because between 2 and 4 a.m. the Brisbane River will go mad. Yeah. A city of over 2 million people is empty now, except for news media and emergency services. This is a city that is just totally emptied out.
So effectively after 2 a.m. this city could be just underwater.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I think a lot of the important structures in the city are going to get damaged. And I think that it's going to be a massive cleanup. And we're talking months and billions of dollars, according to Anna Bligh, the Queensland Premier. However, in Ipswich, which is another town just northwest of Brisbane, they've just been totally annihilated. It's a small town, but the whole town's been just taken out. It's just ridiculous what's going on here. And I want to tell you, the whole country is watching this now. This is the worst disaster in the history of Australia, the worst natural disaster in the history of Australia. And the whole country is watching it. We've got 24/7 news coverage on this, and people are not sleeping. And it's not just about Queensland. We also have, floods in northern New South Wales. That's the state I'm in. That doesn't get as much attention simply because it's not as huge, but it's still a real problem.
Okay, Henry. Well, we'll be watching the news and watching how things pan out throughout the day. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
No worries. I'll speak to you soon.
Take care, Henry. Thank you very much. Henry David O'Donovan, broadcaster, journalist and web designer, live from Bondi.